I want to start with the land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that the town of Winnipeg Beach is located on the First Nations Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties made on these territories, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration to make Manitoba an inclusive and accessible place for everyone who lives here.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the July 26, 2023 regular meeting at Council be approved as per the following additions/deletions. Addition, pamphlet distribution, CAO report and registration form. Addition, Gateway Foundation grant. Addition, curling club donation. Deletion, committee reports. Deletion, council committee and board reports.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Get a seconder, please. Councillor Gendron. Discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Be it hereby resolved that the minutes of the July 12th, 2023 regular meeting be approved as circulated.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Kozlowski. Get a seconder, please. Councillor Houle. I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes. Any questions, comments, points of discussions, or deletions? No, I said that. No? All in favor? Carried? Deletion. I just made it up.
Well, you're the mayor. Be it hereby resolved that council approves the accounts payable listing being check number 21587 to 21688 inclusive of checks, electronic payments, and payroll issued in the amount of $157,904.98 as circulated.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Gendron. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Jarvis. Don't do this. Discussion. Questions, comments? We're good today, Councillor Kozlowski. Really?
Been busy.
Oh, okay. I can't. Yeah, me too. Any other questions, comments, or points of discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried.
So bylaws, vacant and derelict building bylaw. So this is for review. There were some questions in reference to some of the items. We've gotten some clarification. One being in reference to vermin infestation. It would be the responsibility and at the discretion of the building inspector or designated officer. So we wouldn't be adding anything clarifying concrete in the bylaw for that piece. In reference to the definition of unsightly, some verbiage was removed from there as it seemed that it was in conflict with other sections in the bylaw, and that was the wording, any boarded building is also deemed to be unsightly. Yet later in the bylaw we do permit boarding up of buildings, so that statement has been removed. Up for discussion is in reference to section 12. Upon payment of any application or permit fee as designated in the town's annual fee schedule, the owner of a commercial building may obtain an unlimited number of boarded building permits for that building, each being valid for a period of 1 year after being issued. So there was some concern in reference of having the terminology unlimited permits in there. I'm just waiting for the email to pop up. So that is up to council to be able to change how they see fit.
So have people had an opportunity to talk about this? Did you have an email you wanted to talk to us about?
So it's just that legal is saying council can put timelines as they see fit.
Okay. So I know that we had discussion about this, a little bit of discussion about this last meeting. So when we're dealing with residential buildings, a person can only be issued one boarded permit and not have any renewals on it. But when it comes to the owner of a commercial building, it can be unlimited, which means it can go on for years and years and years, right, as long as anybody wants to. And I have a problem with that. I wondered if we could have some conversation about people's thoughts on that. Councillor Gendron.
Does the fact that it has to be renewed annually then give us an opportunity to deny it?
So when I'm looking through this bylaw, as long as it's compliant under the section that's talking about boarded buildings, you would have no ability to deny that.
Okay.
I mean, if it didn't comply with the section that's required, but if it complied in 1 year, it would be surprising. It's fairly in depth of what's required to be in compliance, that where it would fall in compliance the year after. So again, I think we did discuss that with commercial properties, the challenge versus residential property is in reference to the market and the demand for a business to be purchased, which is a lot different. It looks a lot different than a residential dwelling unit, where you have multiple, and the biggest thing is with a residential property, you have multiple levels of interest. When we look at affordability, being a homeowner is nothing new. Being a business owner is definitely something different than just owning a piece of property. And so that's why there can be allowances to commercial properties, as the market and the demand and the ease of transition isn't necessarily the same as just a regular home dwelling unit. So council can, whatever you want within your bylaw, you can have it the same as set out as a residential property with a renewal, with a one-time renewal, with a two-time renewal. This is up for council discussion.
And I understand that there might be problems. It might be more difficult for a business to sell on the one hand, but on the other hand, if we leave it unlimited, we can have the unoccupied buildings on Main Street for 20, 30, 40 years. And so I'm wondering if we can look at some kind of compromise, 3 years or 5 years or something like that, or what other people think about this. Councillor Jen.
And while it might take some time for a business to sell, I think what we need to, if we're going to be making any changes to this and putting some limitations on it, that we can't penalize the owner of a business building if, excuse me, the appetite is not there for that building to sell, versus at least they would have to show us that the building is for sale, versus no, like we can't, I'm not sure how we could force somebody to unboard a building or now make a building presentable, curbside presentable, if they've got it up for sale and are trying to sell it as is.
Councillor Jarvis.
What if the building is vacant? Okay, because then it,
Yep.
but it's presentable. Do you know what I mean? Like, what if the building, there's property out there that people, for whatever reason, don't want to sell, but they maintain it. They paint it, they cut the grass, they look after it, they keep the heat on, you know what I mean? Like how do we, because it's vacant, I think that, and I read it about 2 or 3 times, and it keeps going into the unsightly, the walls are crumbling, the eaves are crumbling, so as long as we have that building inspector go out and say, well, look, this is unsafe, because then we serve them a notice and say, you have to bring this up to code. Like, are we actually looking at a building that's unsightly and in need of repair, or are we just lumping all vacant buildings into the same thing.
What I'm trying to get away from is having a whole bunch of people buy out the businesses on Main Street and leave them empty, hoping at, you know,
Well, that's speculation.
and doing it as, you know, speculation, and leaving our front street with a bunch of empty buildings for 10, 15 years.
But that's not what this bylaw is about, though.
Correct.
This bylaw is about boarded up buildings. What you are addressing is something completely different that is not covered by this bylaw. This is the boarded, this is only to do with buildings that are boarded up.
Okay, but they could board them up and then,
Or vacant.
Right.
I'll use two buildings on the highway as an example. One they both been up for sale for a while, one for like 20 years, and it's falling apart, and the windows are, you know, and it needs to be bulldozed. But the other one is still fully functional. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's been vacant for, I'll say 7 years, but it's maintained, the grass is cut, the roof was repaired, you know, so it's up, and it's still for sale. Both of them are for sale, but one basically should be a tear down, and that's when we should move in as a municipality or whoever and say, look, that needs to be brought up to code. I don't know about the other one, because whether they might not, they're looking after their building.
So section 6 is in reference to a vacant building certificate. And so if
They have to
the,
apply
if
for that.
they have to apply for
Right,
that.
and
And
that's-
what that allows us to do is under Schedule A, looking at that
Mhm.
vacant building, if it's compliant, then we can issue that vacant building certificate.
Right, that's what I was driving at. I
Correct.
said, on Schedule A, there's criteria that has to be met, and then they apply for that vacant building. Now, and I think that's what Councillor Gendron was referring to, is that they could maybe get multiples of these, as long as the building's maintained. Do you know what I mean? Because again, back to Schedule A, everything is taken into perspective, including holes in the walls, the eaves trough, the roof, everything is taken into account. So if any of those aren't met, and our building inspector says, look, this is unsafe, then we would deny them, we would give them a 90 days to bring it to code, and then it's re-inspected. I don't know if that really answers the thing, is that there are buildings out there right now that are not in disrepair,
for sure,
and they're looked after.
for sure.
Correct. And so so it's in question though when we look at this as a blanket bylaw of that if it's in compliance, it's permitted being vacant as long as it's in compliance, and then we issue the certificate. If it's not in compliance, that's when the enforcement piece comes up. We cannot pass any bylaw that requires property to be developed or business to be open and functioning. We cannot control that. In a new development, if you create a new development as part of that zoning, as part of the zoning piece for that new development, you can put stipulations required to build within that a period of time, but we can't go back in this situation with our community plan.
Councillor Gendron, you had something you wanted to say?
No.
Oh, you were holding it.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. No, I did not. I did not.
Okay, Councillor Jarvis.
I actually like the bylaw. I think all the schedules interface with each other. And I think that because everything has to come before council, before anything is finalized. You know, whether you're applying for the boarded up building permit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Any unsightly buildings, derelict buildings still has to come before council, and a resolution has to be passed. Okay, I think that we're not gonna be able to, for somebody that's maintaining their property, vacant or otherwise, I don't think, and maybe what Mayor Jackson's saying is that's not what we're after on that. If they're looking after their property, then it's not unsightly. This is unsightly and derelict, and we have a few of those buildings and or property that needs to be looked after.
Councillor Gendron.
Okay, so just to be clear.
Okay.
The initial thing we were looking at was the piece on the that they can have a boarded building permit for as long as they want it. And the question before us is, do we want to put a limit to that?
That's right.
So if we want to put a limit to that, and let's say, just so that I understand, if we put a limit, I need to know where it's going to, what road we're going down. So let's say we we give them a 5-year limit. The 5 years are up, then what happens? Are they then expected to then turn that building back into at least the standards of a vacant building and get a vacant building permit?
So the process, and that may be why it's stating the words unlimited with an annual renewal, right? Is because through that process is if we say for up to a 5-year period, then the process of this bylaw or the updated version after a 5-year period would be applicable, where if standards have changed throughout that process of bylaw, they would now have to meet the requirements of, like, go through the inspection. If they are completely compliant, they'll be able to obtain the vacant building permit or a boarded up permit. So there is some additional clarity regarding enforcement that I am meeting with the lawyer tomorrow morning to discuss it from an enforcement piece, as because it becomes a bit convoluted between the vacant building and a boarded up building, and what are some of the differences. And so they're minor. It seems to me that it's really minor differences as to having something boarded, having just something vacant. But the premise is the same, that the standard has to be upheld. So the difference of what's happening here is at one time, your vacant dwellings, your derelict buildings, your unsightly, they were all under one bylaw, and legislation has changed. So we have passed our unsightly property, which deals with an unsightly piece. This is strictly just for derelict and vacant buildings.
Sorry, just
Councillor Gendron and then Councillor Jarvis.
sorry, just further to what we were saying. So then if we put a limit on it, and that's the piece I'm not understanding, what is the point of putting a limit on it? If we put a limit on it, does then that mean that you can't have a boarded up building after that time period, and you must then either improve it to a vacant building, or it has to become an occupied building? Like, is that what the purpose of putting a limit to it is?
So this was written with unlimited in reference to commercial.
Yeah.
So at that point, I would assume that the point would then be from being boarded to just vacant. That would be the only transition, and then they'd have a vacant building permit.
Or they bring it up to
Comply with the
comply
board
and have it occupied, but that they would no longer be able to leave it as a boarded up building.
Councillor Jarvis.
But that's confusing, because
Yes.
if they're unsightly, then that's when the building inspector, and they have a 90-day term. However, if they apply for a boarded up building certificate, nothing can be done with that building until they go get a re-occupancy inspection,
That's right.
right? So, and that's why if you apply for a boarded up building, you can't just decide one day that you're not gonna be boarded up anymore. You have to
go through.
You have to get an occupancy permit. You
Yes.
have to go through the whole process all over again. So getting a boarded up building theoretically could be a last resort.
So to be clear, this particular bylaw is for non-occupant buildings, right? Once a building, and that's why it's even a residential building. Once somebody's actually living in the building, council's ability to set a level of standard becomes increasingly challenging and almost impossible to enforce, because there is someone living in that building, or it's being occupied in that building. And as any council does not have the right to determine a person's living standards. And so that's why that's one of the biggest reasons why this has been separated under legislation, because under unsightly. So under our unsightly, we're looking really at the exterior piece, lawn broken lawnmowers in the front yard, washing machines on the deck, heaps of garbage bags. Like, that piece of unsightly is something that can be enforced. However, a standard of living of a building, a quality of a building cannot be enforced if somebody is inhabiting that building. And so this particular bylaw is in reference with boarded up and vacant. No one is in there. It is not being occupied. And that gives you this higher level of ability.
Okay, so one follow-up question then is that on number 13, when it's a residential building, they only get one permit, not to be renewed. So what happens after that time is up to the residential building? Because there's a difference between the residential building and the commercial building. And so then I would wonder why.
Okay, I will get clarity on that, because I did meet with the bylaw officer as well, and there is a few enforcement pieces.
Okay. Councillor Jarvis.
Okay, I'm super confused now.
Yeah.
Are we, again, let's take the conversation, these are vacant and derelict buildings, so nobody should be living in them.
Correct, but if somebody is occupying that building, it becomes very challenging from council
And the two- the
perspective
two-
to be able to address
The two
that
factors are
situation.
residential and commercial, right?
But Councillor Jarvis, they could be vacant, but not derelict. They could be derelict, but not vacant. This doesn't mean it's both.
Granted, but
Just talking
we're all,
about boarded up.
yeah, because we have examples of buildings right now that are not vacant, they're operating, and they're in need of repair. Theoretically, that puts them into this category, even though they're functioning.
So when we look at the definitions though, is a
Yeah.
boarded, there's boarded building means an unoccupied building in which any door, window, or other opening has been covered for more than 7 days by affixing wood, metal, or some other material over it to prevent entry. That's the definition of boarded building, right? Our definition of then vacant means a previously occupied residential building or commercial building or unit thereof that is not presently being used for or occupied, for which a vacant building certificate has been issued.
Right.
So when we look at an unsafe, again, unsafe building means any building that is in unsafe condition in that it is unoccupied or open or unguarded to which entry can be gained. So all of this bylaw is in reference to unoccupied buildings.
Councillor Gendron, you had your hand up?
Yes, this time I did, thank you,
Okay.
Mayor Jackson. So, once that building is occupied, anything in this bylaw does not pertain to that building.
That is correct.
Okay, so they would, any boarded up building permit they have would terminate, or any vacant building permit they have would terminate
Mhm.
once it's occupied. Okay,
Councillor
But
Jarvis.
to add to Councillor Chandra, is they would need an occupancy inspection
Correct.
okay,
after that.
That's through
If
different
they're gonna do,
legislation.
it calls for it, it says it in the bylaw.
Yeah.
If suddenly you have a boarded up building certificate, and now you wanna live in that building, you have to go through all the channels again, and it has to be inspected, and an occupancy permit has to be granted.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, you can't just move back in.
Correct.
Councillor Gendron.
I'm okay, thank you. I did have my hand up, but I'm okay now, thank you.
Okay. Was there any other sections in this that we needed to be talking about?
So the other section that we were looking at was in reference to the schedules, and a lot of vacant or boarded up buildings are not thinking of cottagers in mind, and so this bylaw made reference to that as well under section 25, where it does state that vacant commercial or residential, the temperature does not fall below 10 degrees. And so having that discussion with legal, we would want to look at changing that just because of our demographic that's through there. And these required can be removed remove the below 10 degrees and suggest something along the lines of closed up from November to spring thaw, and the owner shall ensure that the building is properly closed to ensure that all water hookups are properly cleaned, etc.
Yeah.
So we can also take some recommendation from our building inspector if there's some need that I will be reaching out with to planning as well in reference to that. So that is something else that we are looking at changing. We have to remove that does not fall below 10 degrees because there are a lot of buildings that do close for the winter, and we have to respect that.
Yeah, for sure. Any further discussion on this?
Sorry, where was
Councillor
that,
Gendron?
Sharon? Sorry, where was that, Sharon?
Under heating requirements, under
Schedule
these
A.
schedules, 25.
Schedule A, the back,
Yeah, not the bylaw, section 25,
Sorry.
under the schedule A.
Okay, is the schedule attached?
on page
Yes.
16, Councillor Gendron. Councillor Jarvis?
Okay, now back to Councillor Sandro's original point was, is there a time frame on this?
So that's where it's stated here for the closing time frame from November to spring thaw.
No, not that, on just the number of certificates. Like, is there some sort of, I think that was the original point, is that, are we gonna do 4 years, 5 years? Are we gonna be unlimited for commercial?
So are you back to section 12?
Yes.
Well, we never got an answer on whether or not we were gonna put a time frame on how many certificates these people could get.
That was all we were supposed to be doing.
Am I wrong? Did we get an answer on this? So that was the original question.
Yes, well,
I think that our CAO has said that she is going to find out further information in terms of what would be different between clause 12 and clause 13, because the residential building, they only get one ticket, and the commercial buildings can have unending tickets. And so I said, what's the difference between the two? And she is
what
going
happens
to,
next.
and what
So
happens next,
I
and
will
she's
be
going to
following up.
investigate that and bring that
No,
back
I'm
here
satisfied.
for yet another discussion.
I'm okay now.
No, it's
Councillor
good.
Gendron.
It's good.
Under heating requirements, so where it says residential vacant buildings shall be heated so that the temperature then does not bubble. Can we just not indicate residential buildings with a vacant building certificate?
No, because we don't want, for every cottage, we don't want every cottage to be having a vacant building certificate, because there's this whole level of, that is just not conducive.
No,
because
no, what I'm saying is, so that's exactly why I'm saying this, that if we specify that it's any residential building with a vacant building certificate, and based on the bylaw, cottagers would not be required to get a vacant building certificate for their shutdown period. Would they?
Just
No.
wait.
So that's what I'm saying, instead of removing the temperature issue of not falling below 10 degrees, leaving that there but saying residential properties with vacant building certificates, that this only applies to those with the vacant building certificate, it doesn't apply to all buildings.
We'll look into that.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comment about this issue? Good.
So I do just want to state that once we solidify the points in here and I get some clarity with the enforcement piece, a public hearing will be required before we provide second reading of the bylaw. So I will give the amendments for review of council only, schedule the public hearing, which we anticipate, providing we get appropriate answers in a timely fashion, the public hearing to be August 23rd, same date as council meeting, unless council, I don't expect huge interest in this particular bylaw, but if council does feel that we want to host it other than here in chambers, to let me know, and then I would look at a different date and not schedule it for council meeting date.
Maybe we could ask people to register to attend the public hearing so that we would know how many people might be
The
interested?
notice of the public hearing must state where
I see.
the
Yeah.
public hearing is going to take place.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, that was fun.
unfinished business for discussion, Boardwalk Days Parade.
This is my agenda item, so if people remember last meeting, we talked about whether we were gonna put a float in or who was gonna be in the parade. It's come to my attention that the staff this year aren't interested in, being in the parade. So it's up to us. I'd like to have a final decision, given that it's, this Saturday. I'd like to have a final decision in terms of what we're gonna do. Are we all wanting to walk? Are we wanting to ride our bicycles? What are we wanting to do? Don't all speak up at once. Councillor Kozlowski, it looks like you have something to say.
I am walking with the Lions Club and be handing out candies to the kids.
Very nice. Councillor Houle, Councillor Jarvis.
I got no preference, honestly. Whatever we decide as a whole.
Okay, so do we all have pedal bikes? I know you have a motorcycle. Councillor Houle, do you have a pedal bike?
I do.
You do. Brilliant. Councillor Jarvis, do you have a pedal bike?
Yes.
Councillor Gendron,
I do.
maybe we should all ride our bikes. Can we agree to that?
Sure.
Councillor Houle,
Sure.
Councillor Gendron.
I'm fine. Could we not have Council Wool ride his big boy bike?
No, I don't think he should have his big boy bike. Because we're gonna have pedal bikes. And it's making an environmental statement as well.
Okay.
So where are we meeting to ride our bikes in the parade?
Maple and Prospect. doesn't it?
Maple and Prospect, so I haven't read the thing. I think we have to be there by 10 o'clock or something, so maybe we could gather there,
10
quarter
o'clock.
to 10 so that we can get ourselves organized, because that doesn't seem to be our strongest subject right now. Okay, quarter to 10 with your bicycles
10 o'clock.
at 10,
10 o'clock.
Maple and Prospect.
Maple and Prospect.
Like this side of the bridge though. But I can't watch going over the
Don't
bridge on a
me,
bike.
Councillor Jarvis. Yes, Councillor Kozlowski.
How are they gonna know you council? You guys get special shirts, or you guys gonna be wearing plaques or
Oh,
what?
please, they'll either
Body
recognize
armor
us or they
what?
won't.
Body armor.
Saturday, they know who we are.
I think, yeah, after
Badges?
Saturday, they'll know who we are.
Badges?
Or targets. Okay, I think people might recognize us. I don't think we have T-shirts that say council and
So
mayor.
it comes out of the marina, right? Like,
I don't know. I've never been in a
the
parade before.
Does it come out of the marina? I've never watched the
How about if
source.
we just meet there at quarter to 10 on Saturday morning, we'll figure it out. Can we do that?
Okay, so we're back to quarter to 10.
Yes, we are. We
Okay.
always have been.
9:45.
9:45.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So the only question I do have in reference to the bicycles is administration was directed to order candy to pass out,
I'm fast.
Which-
Sounds like we're on foot.
which we have, and so I am just, I can't take
Is
it.
it hard candy? Because if it's soft candy, it's not gonna hurt as much.
You want to know,
But this is
You
like
wanna know how
birding
I-
cats.
hanging onto our handlebars while we're giving out candy, is that the question?
I don't have a basket.
So,
You have a basket on your
I
bike?
said I don't have a basket. Where am I gonna put
So-
the candy?
Well, no.
Why don't you guys just walk with the Lions?
I think we're on foot.
We got all kinds of candy you can't throw.
Do I just
You know,
walk instead of
throw
doing bikes?
Let's walk.
Can I just
Councillor
ask?
Gendron, you had a question?
Yeah. Why can't we throw candy?
Because they'll hit somebody in the eye, in the mouth, face, whatever, so there's no more throw candy.
No,
Yeah.
Or
part
you
of the,
gotta hand it to them.
part of the problem is that when people were throwing candy in the middle of the street before, there have been a couple of incidents in Manitoba where kids have run out to get the candy and gotten run over.
By other.
Fight on Monty Python.
Actually,
Right
I
up
was
there
in a
with
play
Toy
like that,
Dogs.
okay.
So we can walk along the sides and we can throw it into the crowd, but we can't throw it on the road or people are gonna get run over.
Sorry, a flash.
I'll get it.
It's up there
Okay,
with
we're a
those
little
big decisions.
tired.
Okay.
It's up there with those
Okay,
big decisions
so,
we
yeah,
have to
we're a
make.
little
We've
tired
got big
today, folks,
decisions
so-
to make, so there is candy that we do have, so, there's some chocolate bars and there's, I believe, some bubble gum. So we
So
do
maybe we
have
should
some
just walk.
things through there.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk.
Okay, why don't we just walk, folks? Leave the bikes at home. We'll just meet at Maple and Prospect, we'll walk, we'll hand out candy, we'll do that, okay? 4 to 10, Maple and Prospect, this side of the bridge. Next.
So Green Jobs Initiative, just under unfinished, just to let council be aware that we were approved for that, that grant application.
All right.
So that was a positive thing. Be it hereby resolved that council does not authorize the one-time exception to allow for the distribution of the Amazing Race pamphlet during the 2023 Boardwalk Days Parade. And further be it resolved, council does not authorize a permanent change to the registration rules to allow for pre-approved pamphlet distribution.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Gendron. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Kozlowski. Discussion. I trust everybody had an opportunity to read the CAO report on this. Discussion? Anybody else? Discussion, well, we have some options here, so what do people think? Councillor Gendron.
I agree. It makes sense. Presented appropriately.
Okay. And you're also talking about making permanent changes to the registration form?
Yep.
Yep. Anybody disagree? All in favor? Carried.
Memorial Bench Program. So the Memorial Bench application that normally has happened required these concrete benches, and for those concrete benches to be purchased through a local vendor. These particular cement benches are no longer available, whether it's through a local vendor or through any other vendor in Winnipeg. They are just not producing those particular stone benches any longer. We did have a request of someone who wanted to participate in the Memorial Bench program, and we were looking through some items through another supplier that supplies commercial grade benches, which the two that the individual was interested in is the Memorial Bench or the Contemporary Bench, which is very different looking than the cement benches. And so before we move forward with this and look at options, is I have sent this email off to our Works Department as well in reference to installation to see if there is any complications with the installation of these types of benches. And so it is now up for council for us to be looking at moving forward. Is the Memorial Bench program on hold until such time we can find similar cement benches, or is this something that council is willing to consider a different avenue and what that looks like? That being said, these particular types of benches, the catalogs we get, they are very specific. They are through Parks and Rec suppliers, so our local suppliers would not necessarily have access to this type of material.
Discussion, anybody? Councillor Gendron?
I would like to suggest that we allow the local supplier who's been supplying them to us a short window of time to see if they have something that they can get from any of their suppliers. And that would meet council's approval. If they can't, then we've given a local supplier an option, and then we move to these. The one thing that I did note on this is that they're allowing any and every color. I would like to see that if we end up going with either of these that have been presented to us, that we limit the color selection that they can use. Because the whole idea of going with it in the first place with the one bench was so that it was similar aesthetics throughout the town. So while I understand we may need to change them, I would like to see that we limit the color or pick a color that we want to see throughout.
And you're saying, Sharon, that there doesn't seem to be anybody else who deals with the concrete benches?
That's we're not able to find. So because I mean, our local suppliers were ordering them through Barkman, and Barkman's just not producing them.
And
So
nobody else is?
Oh, so we already know they can't get anything for us?
I haven't met with I know that one of the suppliers, this individual did meet with both of the suppliers.
Oh, and they weren't able to get anything concrete?
That they weren't able to get that particular bench because that was a Barkman issue. And so at this point, I have not spoken with either of the suppliers to see if there's of interest, but I can certainly appreciate at least giving the opportunity for them to say, look, we're not interested in trying to find this, we're out, or they may have another suggestion.
Yeah, if they have
I know
another
that-
suggestion of a concrete bench, I mean, that would certainly be my first preference. If not, then we'll have to look at either one of these.
I think it becomes, when you look at the weight of these benches, Barkman being in Winnipeg, made it very convenient. If you're looking at shipping from Alberta or Ontario, it just becomes cost prohibitive, right? So I don't know.
Is Barkman the only show in town in Winnipeg?
I have not reviewed that. That's always been in my past positions. These types of benches, it's always been Barkman. So I have never researched another option.
Any further discussion on this? Are we needing a decision from the council today?
No, I will contact the local suppliers, and if council could look at if there is a possibility that both of the local suppliers will not have an alternative for the Memorial Bench program, then the decision will be needed to be made as to whether or not we just, I don't want to say cancel, but temporarily suspend the Memorial Bench program, or do we look at an alternative option? And if this is the alternative option, what your thoughts are on that?
Yep.
Council.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Jarvis.
Have we tried any of the actual memorial people, like out on Highway 9 and that, to do, rather than Barkman? There's at least 2 or 3 of them on highway between Middle Church and Selkirk that actually people.
That's true.
They do stone monuments.
Yeah, they do.
And we might get a better price.
Okay.
If I'm going by in the next year, we're gonna pop in and ask some of these people if they do these things.
We can reach out and
Sure,
see.
we go there. There's at least 3 of them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Additions, Gateway Foundation, whereas a municipal grant has been approved in 2019 by the town of Winnipeg Beach to the Gateway Foundation for multiple years, therefore be it resolved that council for the town of Winnipeg Beach authorize payment for the 2023 municipal grant in the amount of $5,000 to the Gateway Foundation.
Can I get a mover, please? Councilor Gendron. Seconder, please. Councilor Jarvis. Discussion? Councilor
Was
Kozlowski.
this part of our budget?
So although this wasn't clearly identified, as there wasn't any strong paper trail other than what was provided by the organization upon the request, I was unaware of this commitment. However, there was a significant buffer room in that donations line. So between this request and the next request, that there is a level of commitment that we can't not fulfill at this time. There is room, but will be tight towards the end of the year for upcoming donation requests.
Other discussion, Councillor General?
Yeah, I would just like to ask that the Gateway Foundation be advised of what our timeframe is for annual, and that this will need to be going to, I mean, I'm assuming we want it to go back to an annual request, not committing long-term and making commitments for other councils, or making commitments for other years where we don't know if we can meet that commitment 2 years from now, right now.
So the CAO, I did plan, however, there were a few unexpected items that did surface in reference to this request and the next request, is looking at putting a policy in place. Several municipalities do have that, where it is over a certain amount, because it can impact a budget line or really take a big chunk out of a budget line unexpectedly. Looking at putting a policy together by January 31st, all requests over $1,500 must be received. Otherwise, it would not be considered for that particular budget year. And that way, we would have these numbers well in advance before finalizing the budget.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Whereas a donation has been provided to the Winnipeg Beach Curling Club for the past 5 years in the amount of $5,000, therefore be it resolved that Council approve the 2023 donation in the amount of $5,000 to the Winnipeg Beach Curling Club.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Gendron. Seconder, please. Councillor Jarvis. Discussion? All in favor? Carried.
So council committee and board reports, committee roundtable. If council has met with any committees or boards and there's something for discussion.
Pardon me, Councillor Gendron?
So did we not remove this from the agenda?
We removed the committee and board reports itself, not the roundtable discussion, because there is no reports to be approved.
I guess I do, sorry. I thought.
Okay, Councillor Gendron, you had something you wanted
I
to
have
talk
a couple
about?
of things from East Interlake, one from Tourism Group and one.
Could you speak up, please?
I have one, yeah, just, sorry Pam, I was thinking that we weren't doing this, if I can just have 1 second.
Sure.
I have something from the Interlake Tourist Group and to raise, that was, it's a follow-up. And I just, sorry, I need to just get the email.
While Councillor Gendron is getting that ready, is there anybody else have anything for the roundtable? Anything from safety? No? Okay.
Okay, so I had raised the issue earlier with regard to the Interlake Tourism Association and Samantha wanting to present some information to us.
Right.
So she followed up with me, we finally reconnected, and there's these meetings that are going to be happening, that what happens at the meetings is what she would be presenting to us. So I'm just going to read you the email that for us to consider. The ITA is passionate to bring your municipalities past, present, and future into focus, capture the unique traditions that make your town municipality remarkable, while also highlighting where it stands today and paving a path forward. Our brand new pilot project, Interlake Connections, is launching this September. We're starting in Riverton, and our guests will be from Riverton, Fisher Branch, Pegwith, Fisher River, and all the way up to Hecla and areas in between. So they're trying to get communities close together to start meeting, doing some networking. So what she would like is she's like to request that the second Interlake Connections be hosted in Winnipeg Beach in October. The presentation itself lasts 15 to 20 minutes, and the event is a total of 2 hours long. It allows Winnipeg Beach and the surrounding communities the opportunity to network, connect, and learn about all that the ITA has to offer. They would pick a licensed venue in town, and they would cater snacks for everybody. It would be great to have the municipality attend this event, not only to learn what we can offer, but to support the communities that we are serving. So that request is there. I will forward this to the CAO.
Okay.
And then the other piece that, because she wears multiple hats, was she asked me about, do we have a Chamber of Commerce in Winnipeg Beach? Well, she knows we don't have a chamber. She is actually president of the Gimli Chamber of Commerce. And it's actually the Gimli Chamber of Commerce and District. Now, I don't know if as Chair of Economic Development, this should actually be passed to Councillor Kozlowski, but she is wanting to, maybe explore some options as far as would we fall in that district? Would businesses in town be interested in getting a chamber together? So that was the other piece she raised with me.
Any discussion on that?
So just in question or clarification, explore options of creating a chamber or having the businesses participate in the Gimli Chamber of Commerce and District organization. Would that be the onus of ITA to be reaching out to these business communities?
These are two separate, she wears two different hats. These are two different things that she does with me under two separate emails.
But she is the president of the Gimli Chamber of Commerce and District, and so it's unclear as to whether or not Winnipeg Beach falls within that district, is what I understand?
Yeah, she would like to explore whether we are in the district, whether we want to be part of the district.
Okay, and so when we look at chambers, that is the business community and not of council.
Right.
So my question was, when this exploration, what does that look like? Like hosting a meeting with all the businesses? Is it an individual one-on-one tete-a-tete? What level does administration play in that?
She's looking at trying to do some brainstorming on ways to accomplish getting the Winnipeg Beach business community under that district. So I'm not familiar with the organization of chambers. Is it strictly on the business community? Do we as a council try to sort of be the go-between between the two? Councillor Jarvis, I'm going to get that.
I belong to a few of them and they're strictly business.
So it is not us.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the council should be having much to do with that.
No, I belong to the
businesses.
Downtown Business Association in Winnipeg, and they tried to get one of these going here, I'll say 10 years ago, maybe longer. It's a really hard thing to do, and it's all strictly business. You have to be a business owner to belong to it.
So what I can maybe do is share with her the fact that we have a business directory on our website. There is contact information for the businesses there if she is interested in reaching out. That's that's a means for her to be able to get business contacts in our community. Okay.
I don't think it should be coming through council.
No, that's fine. I'll just share that with her that we do have that directory on our website and it's there for her to use. That's it. Thank
Any other
you.
discussion? Thank you.
Be it hereby resolved that the correspondence be accepted as circulated.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Houle. I trust everybody's had an opportunity to look at all the correspondence. Any questions, comments, points of discussion? No? All in favor? Carried.
Be it hereby resolved that council moves in camera at 6:59 PM to discuss matters that are in the preliminary stages. And be it further resolved that any matters discussed while in camera be held confidential until such time as discussed in open council.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Get a seconder, please. Councillor Kozlowski.
Okay, should have camera and mic.
Be it hereby resolved that council moves out of camera at 8:41 PM and resumes the regular meeting of council.
Need a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. And seconder, please? Councillor Gendron. All in favor? Carried.
Be it hereby resolved that council authorize the CAO to execute an encroachment agreement with roll number 2300 being 22 Main Street.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Kozlowski. Discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Be it hereby resolved that council adjourns the July 26, 2023 regular meeting of council at 8:42 PM.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Jarvis. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Gendron. All in favor? Carried.